All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice question series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Kyler, a behavior analyst, is designing an intervention for a client whose family values communal dining. The family explains that, in their culture, they emphasize sharing and waiting for everyone to be served before eating during mealtime. Kyler modifies his treatment plan to include this feedback and retrains staff on the intervention. What principle is Kyler demonstrating? So we're looking at Kyler and the principle he is demonstrating by doing what? Well, he is modifying his treatment plan to include the feedback and he retrains his staff. What feedback was Kyler given? Well, he had an intervention for a family who has cultural values that emphasize sharing and waiting before mealtime. So Kyler, he implements this cultural feedback into his treatment plan and then puts it into the intervention. What principle is exemplified by what Kyler has done? A, experimental control. We haven't even started the intervention yet, so there's no way to know if experimental control does or does not exist. Kyler is simply in the planning and training phase. B, conceptually systematic practice. We don't know what strategies Kyler is using, so we can't be sure he's being conceptually systematic. The only thing we know that Kyler has included in his plan is the cultural feedback from the family, which may or may not be conceptually systematic. C, technological practice. When we're technological, we're writing treatment plans and strategies and interventions in a way that can be replicated. We aren't sure if anybody's replicated what Kyler is about to do. So the only answer we have left is D, cultural responsiveness. Kyler has responded to the feedback about the client's culture, and he's modified his treatment plan to include that feedback. Now, do you have to 100% of the time, without question, include all feedback ever given by stakeholders or clients? Of course not. This is a collaborative effort. You want to listen, you want to be empathetic, and you want to do your best, but you still are, at the end of the day, the behavior analyst, and it's your decision. Now, notice that we attacked the question first, and we asked a lot of questions about what information we were given. Then once we got to the answer choices, we could easily spot the right answer. Do all your work up front in the question, and then head to the answer choices. You are responsible for auditing half of all treatment plans that are submitted to insurance companies every 6 months. These plans are required in order to receive funding for client services. During your most recent audit, you noticed that the graphs in 2 treatment plans from the same analyst don't match the graphs that are in the company's data collection system. What should you do now as a first step to remain ethical? So we have an ethical question, and it appears there might be a potential breach of ethics. What do we know so far? We know you're auditing treatment plans that need to be submitted to insurance companies. During your audit, you see that graphs in 2 of the plans from the same analyst don't match graphs that are in the company's data collection system. Immediately upon seeing that, a few things might go through your mind. The first might be this analyst made a mistake. The second might be this analyst intentionally altered their data. How should you approach this from an ethical standpoint? When you think there's an ethical violation that might have occurred, but you aren't sure, what should you do as a behavior analyst? A, confront the analyst and accuse them of falsifying data. Accusations are not going to get you anywhere in this situation. That is not a good collaborative effort as a behavior analyst. So we don't want to confront them. All we have right now is information that the graphs they submitted don't match the data collection system. We don't know if it was intentional or not. So confronting them and accusing them, we don't have any information to back up that strategy. B, inform the insurance company that data has been falsified and the analyst has been fired. Again, when an ethical violation may have occurred, The number one thing you want to do first is talk to the person who may have committed that violation. Unless someone's been seriously hurt or injured, always go to that person first and communicate the issue. C, sit down with the analyst and review the treatment plans. This is going to be the easiest way to approach this. Sit down, show them what you found, and then go through it with them. If after you've done that, you still believe there are issues, then you can escalate. D, consult with the Behavior Analysis Certification Board on how to proceed. They're not going to be there to help you. They are monitoring our whole industry, right? Not these individual problems. If you believe something has occurred, the first thing you want to do is go to the person you think may or may not have committed the violation and talk to them about it. Communication, communication, communication. Rick, a behavior analyst, is designing an intervention for a new client. The client's parents express concerns regarding certain strategies that Rick is using, as they would prefer methods that are more aligned with their cultural values. Despite this, Rick implements his intervention as he originally designed it without modification. What might Rick be failing to do? It's interesting we would get this question after the first question we have, because Rick is also dealing with these cultural values. Now, we know Rick designed the intervention. The client's parents express concern regarding the strategies because the strategies are not aligned with the cultural values. And what does Rick do? He implements his intervention as originally designed without modification. Now, we don't have a ton of information to say if it was right or wrong what Rick did. And the question is just saying, what might Rick be failing to do? Not what did Rick fail to do, just what might be Rick failing to do by not implementing this feedback. A, Rick is not remaining truthful when making public statements about behavior analysis. Well, that is part of our ethical code, but Rick isn't in public here. He is handling these stakeholders and their concerns with the cultural values. A doesn't fit. B, Rick is failing to train for and promote generalization. We don't know that for sure. Just because Rick is not implementing these cultural values doesn't mean his intervention isn't training for generalization. We don't have enough information to say that for sure. C, Rick is not treating the client with dignity and respect. This is potentially what Rick is failing to do. If he's neglecting their cultural values, if he's neglecting the parent and client feedback, that is potentially failing to uphold dignity and respect. Has Rick definitely done that? No, but it's potentially Rick has failed to treat the people or the clients with dignity and respect. D, Rick is not remaining conceptually systematic. Again, we don't know what Rick's intervention looks like, so we're not sure if it's conceptually systematic or not. What we know for sure is Rick might be failing to maintain dignity and respect for his client and his client stakeholders by not implementing their cultural values and by not taking the feedback. A behavior analyst is trying to reduce a child's whining behavior, which was previously reinforced on a VR7 schedule. After implementing an extinction procedure, the child continues whining for several weeks before the behavior finally decreases. What effect might be occurring due to the intermittent reinforcement schedule? So we have an extinction question, and we're looking at the effect possibly caused by the intermittent reinforcement schedule. Now let's think about extinction. If we have extinction and we have behavior that is starting here, and we implement extinction, we expect an extinction burst, a temporary increase, and then a decrease. Now, what happens if you have extinction with behavior here? You implement extinction, and behavior just kind of continues, and extinction has no effect. What do we call that? Because that's what we're dealing with here. And the clue is we're on a VR7 schedule, so a pretty thin reinforcement schedule. And the thinner the schedule, the more intermittent the reinforcement schedule, the more difficult it is to implement extinction. It's just harder to put behavior on extinction that isn't receiving a lot of reinforcement. So what do we call it when after extinction occurs, that behavior doesn't really respond? A, an extinction burst. Well, our extinction burst is that temporary increase followed by that decrease. We're not there yet, right? The behavior just kind of kept going for a couple of weeks. What likely occurred was B, resistance to extinction. And the key is this intermittent schedule. The more thinner the schedule is, the more likely it is that resistance to extinction is going to occur. So this behavior was highly resistant to extinction over several weeks. Spontaneous recovery occurs after the extinction burst, once behavior is already decreased, and then behavior suddenly comes back. Same as resurgence. So when the behavior is just simply not responding to extinction because of the intermittent schedule, we call that resistance to extinction. A behavior analyst emails a client's current treatment plan and data from the last 3 months to the client's teacher. While the report contains helpful data, the analyst did not encrypt the email or put a confidentiality disclaimer in the email. What is the analyst most possibly violating by not safeguarding this email? So again, the question wants to know, what did they most possibly violate? So we're not saying they definitely did, but what is the most possible, what is the violation they most likely committed? Let's put it that way, right? We know the analyst emailed the client's treatment plan to the teacher, which is fine. It's full of helpful data, but they did not encrypt the email or put a confidentiality disclaimer. So they just essentially sent all this private information with no confidentiality protection. So they probably violated A, requirements for maintaining confidentiality. It is your responsibility as a behavior analyst to make sure your emails, your text messages, however you're communicating, is secure. If for some reason an email of yours with private information were to go to the wrong person or fall in the wrong hands, you are responsible. So it's up to you to make sure that private information stays private. The core principle of beneficence would just be doing good. And it's not necessarily not doing good by not putting the disclaimer, but they're not maintaining confidentiality. C, cultural competence. There's nothing in here about cultural issues or relevance. And then D, developing and maintaining competence. So yes, by not maintaining confidentiality, by not understanding how to safeguard our emails, maybe we haven't maintained competence, but it's much more likely we violated the requirements for maintaining confidentiality because we have not taken the extra steps to remain secure. It is your responsibility as an analyst to take those steps. Thanks for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Please subscribe. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. We'll see you soon.